Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another fantastic presentation. I'm super excited to have with us right now Dr. Lise Lewis, who is an accredited master executive coach and coach supervisor. And she's been in the coaching world for over 30 years. And for some of the attendees here, it's more than a lifetime. So she's been doing this for a lot of time, or a very long time. And for the past 6 years, she's led an international executive board of the European Mentoring and Coaching Council that has members worldwide. And during that time, she instigated the creation of professional standards for coach. And she also mentored Supervision that became an accreditation for supervision training programs and individual practice. She is currently an EMCC Global Special Ambassador, and during both of these roles, she has made several keynote presentations at different conferences and presentations covering the future of leadership and the role that coaching, mentoring, and supervision contributes to people and organizational development. So today in her presentation, she will give more information on why supervision. That's the question. That's like the title of her presentation. Why supervision? Because you don't know what you might be missing. So everyone, let's welcome Dr. Lise Lewis. Thank you so much for saying yes to our invitation.
Thank you, Eugene, for inviting me. And I should add on to that, other than the roles that I gave you, I am now founder of Blue Sky International, and we provide coach training programs and coach supervision training programs, and I'm an executive coach. So it's important
Amazing.
that we what's happening now in my life, okay, to just
absolutely. And at the end of the presentation, I'll actually ask you even more details about that for everybody who's interested in going further and deeper with you. So Dr. Lise Lewis, why supervision?
Okay, thank you, Eugene. And so I'm going to share a presentation with everyone. There's the title, as you say, why supervision? Why do we bother with it? Because you don't know what you might be missing. And I'm hoping to share with you over the next bit of time, showing this presentation, why it may benefit you. So first of all, what is it? What is supervision? Well, I'm going to use a European Mentoring and Coaching Council global definition because that's the professional body that I'm aligned with. And it's quite a neat, short definition, I think. So in this instance, supervision is a safe space for reflective dialogue with a practicing supervisor. So you could do this with another coach if you wanted to. You could have a supervision conversation, but sometimes it's really helpful to work with a trained supervisor. And it's about supporting the supervisee's practice, okay, and their development and their well-being. And a quick question I'd like everyone to think about, just to reflect on this as we go through the session, is when was the last time you felt listened to without interruption? And this is what you have with supervision. You've got someone there that's there for you and to have a conversation with you, and you are listened to. I think that in itself is a gift. We all know when we're listened to. So that's what supervision is. So moving on, who's it for? Well, primarily, it started with being for coaches. And I have to say that it wasn't created by coaches. People in education, psychotherapists, counselors have had, and others, I would imagine, in other disciplines, psychologists, have had supervision throughout their practice. So it is a common practice to have supervision of the work that you do. More recently, and probably not all those many years ago, supervision has been introduced for coaches, and the EMCC is one of the leading bodies in pulling that together. And also mentors. We have mentors in organizations and we have mentors in private practice, and also supervisors. That's a more recent development in terms of, wow, who supervises the supervisor? That question's been...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I may interject here real quick. So for instance, somebody can go and take a coaching class, a coaching training, right? And then they become a coachee. And then they I don't know, they, study more and then they can start teaching. So then they become trainers and they can start teaching others to become coaches. But then being a trainer does not give you, or being a trainer does not imply that you also supervise. It's just a trainer, right?
Right. So hopefully when people train as coaches, they've experienced supervision during that training so that they get a flavor of what the benefits are for it. People don't necessarily become a trainer once they become a coach. They may not wish to do that as well. Some people do, like myself, decide that they want to share the learning, share the experience with others, and do train. But it's quite a more common step for coaches and mentors after they've been practicing for some time, and I mean some time, to become supervisors. And ideally, when we become a supervisor, we have some training for that. And it's not, this is a fairly recent development as well, Eugen, that there are now training courses out there for coach and mentor supervisors. And if you're going to go for one, go for an accredited one.
Yeah, of course.
Make sure that it reaches professional standards. So that's the kind of journey that aligns with what you're saying. But
so one cannot become a supervisor unless he's a trainer. Is that correct? Did I get that right? Or can I, like, I don't know, let's say, quote unquote, jump from, I've taken a coaching training, I've been practicing using the information, of course, and everything else, and now I want to become a supervisor and supervise others. Can I do that without being a trainer myself, or how does it work?
Yeah, you don't need to be a trainer. Anyone can call themselves a coach, anyone can call themselves a mentor, anyone can call themselves a supervisor in our industry. And it's because we're unregulated. So unlike some other disciplines, like psychology, which are regulated, coaching and supervision isn't. That's why it's so important that we follow professional practice and follow guidelines that have been instigated by professional bodies, such as the MCC Global, ICF, Association for Coaching, APAC, Commensa. There's many other professional bodies throughout the world. So I wouldn't necessarily link training with being a supervisor, unless you want to become a trained supervisor. And obviously I'm going to promote that because that is the best way to be professional about that practice.
Of course, yes.
So it's better to have some supervision with another coach to coach, than not have any at all.
Yeah.
And just to finish there, Eugen, supervision is also for managers and leaders. It's coming through now that managers and leaders also want this type of supervision. Okay, maybe we'll say a bit more about that later on. I like to put these self-reflection questions in, which I hope are helpful for those that are viewing. And this one for you to think about is, when do you make space for personal reflection? When do any of us? In this fast-paced world that we live in these days, everyone's rushing from meeting to meeting, project to project. Things are very busy. The world is busy, because of the advances in technology, and because we're on a global platform. So we can be on 24/7. So it's that busyness of our lives. When do we just take a bit of time out, relax back, chill out, stare into space, and just reflect? If you don't do it, I mean, people practice mindfulness, people practice mindfulness breathing, people work together in mindfulness. That's a great practice, thoroughly recommended. But even if you don't do that, just do what I did then, just sit back, sometimes, and just go. Better still, go for a walk outside, enjoy the fresh air, enjoy some nature. That will give you some beautiful personal reflection time. Okay, let's move on. So what's the purpose of supervision? Why bother with it? Well, first of all, for coaches and mentors and supervisors, it opens the door into our practice. We've got somebody there that's there for us, that's working with us. and helps us to open that door and look into our practice and explore it. Time out for us to review what we're doing. It shines a light on unconscious bias. I expect the people that are listening to this and viewing this will be aware of unconscious bias.
Well, let's just make sure that we speak the same language. I would rather make that clear than, because we don't know, some people are here because they are coaches already. Some people are here because they want to be coaches. Others are here because they're curious. So let's just level the play field here and, make it, make everybody be aware of what that means.
I certainly will. So and thank you. We do use some jargon sometimes in the work that we do. And unconscious bias basically is about those blind spots that we have. We're all human beings, obviously, and so we all have those human frailties. And blind spots are there in all of us, whoever we are. We have parts of our personality, parts of our behavior that we're not always aware of. And to go and talk with somebody who might just see something in us that they might want to shed a light on and say, can we just stop there? What I'm hearing is this. How does that work for you in your practice? You're conscious of what that behavior, what that way of thinking, what that way of relating might have with others. So those are the sorts of statements that supervisors might make. All right. It helps us to think, oh, really? Do I really come across like that? There's lots of people I work with in organizations that, will come and talk about maybe, somebody that they're working with. And my role as a supervisor is to ask them, so how are you contributing to this? What might be happening between you that we're not aware of at the moment? Let's talk about that. Okay, so that's the kind of work that comes in there. It's also a learning partnership. The word supervision sometimes sounds as if it's got some power to it. You're going to be a supervisor and you're going to look at my work and see what I'm doing. I really promote this very much in everything that I do. It's a learning partnership. I learn heaps from the people that I work with all of the time. I think, those of us that might use the word expert, does it really exist? I don't know. I'm not one for sure. And I love having those dialogues where I can learn along with my learning partner. So this is what supervision's about. It's about reflecting together. It's about offering feedback, reciprocal feedback. I give you some feedback, you give me some feedback, and we learn from it, and developing a dialogue. So we're not pushing an opinion, we're developing a dialogue where we're listening and respecting each other's comments and joining in that conversation. Parallels, which I'll talk more about, noticing and exploring those that can sometimes happen between our client, okay, so the coach, the person the coach is working with, the coach and the supervisor they're having a conversation with, and you know what, in the wider system, it often happens. So as a supervisor, I might be feeling a little, I might be feeling a bit bogged down at the moment listening to this from this coach that I'm working with. And if I'm feeling that, it's helpful to say to the coach, do you know what, right now, I'm getting this feeling of lethargy and kind of heaviness in me. Does that relate to anything that might be happening in your relationship with your coaching client? So many times, Eugen, I can't tell you, somebody will turn around and say, that's just how I feel when I'm working with this client, I feel tired and it's not happening. That helps us to then explore that feeling of lethargy, that feeling of heaviness. What's that telling us? It's an additional resource in the conversation. So that's where those, what we call parallel processes come in to our practice. If it's happening between the two of us, so something might be happening between you and I, it might also be happening to some of our listeners. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. And then seriously, it's about working ethically and within those boundaries. It's I'm not a trained psychotherapist, so I wouldn't I wouldn't go along that route with my clients. I can work with behaviors, various other areas, but it's crossing a boundary. And what's happening now is because all of us practitioners are learning more about different disciplines, the boundaries can be very blurred. It's not a sharp line, you know, I'm either this or it's working ethically. It's about talking with, and we can talk about this at supervision. You know, what's my knowledge and what's my experience? And how can I work?
And here I have a question, which I know a lot of both coaches and therapists, psychotherapists, I don't know, NLP practitioners, hypnotherapists, whatever. And I found this question, you know, oftentimes in conversations on this topic. How do you draw a line, or how do you know if what you are discussing with a client, how do you know if it's coaching or if it's therapy? Like, where is the line? Where is the line between coaching and therapy? How do you draw that line when the client comes in with a, let's say, I don't know, let's say I want to be more productive. Let's just say that, right? And so that would be something that as a coach you could address, but maybe you discover there's some other issues, and actually that might kind of segue into therapy. So how do you draw the line between the two?
It's a lovely question, Eugen, and it's very relevant about that boundary in terms of we don't know what's going to come up in the coaching conversation. Just as you said, you know, we could start off with, well, let's, you know, that's a fairly tactical topic, isn't it? How can I be more productive? And you can start off with that, and then other things emerge. And it's not an easy question to answer because we all have specialisms. We all have our own knowledge that we've accrued over the time and in our practice. So I can only speak for myself here because we'll all be different in the way that we handle it. Some people will have a very hard line about it and say, oh, you know, I never go in that area. I would challenge that by saying, how do you know you're not wandering into that area? But I would also be very sure that I did my contracting. That's another word we use in coaching and mentoring and supervision, right at the beginning of working with a client, to say, this is my approach, this is how I work, these are the areas I work in. If we wander into an area of work where I think I can't be of help to you because I don't have that expertise or that experience, then I will say that. I won't go somewhere where I may make you in a difficult situation, or I may make the situation difficult and I may compromise you. However, I will support you in helping you to find somebody that I believe can help you in that specialism. So first of all, I'd have a trigger in myself thinking, I've gone as far as I can go. I can go no further with this one. However, I'm not going to abandon my client. I'm going to be honest and ethical and say, we're going somewhere where I don't really think it's my bag. And that would be for anything, you know, if you asked any work that you weren't proficient in, then it's unethical to pretend or even try, and you could be very damaging to your client. Does that answer your question okay, Eugen?
Yeah, yeah, and it's very important. And you know, since we are on this topic, and I don't want to, you know, take away from your presentation, of course. So I just want to, you know, it kind of raised another question. Do you have situations where, for instance, you work with a client for coaching, and you arrive at this point where it's like, hey, I'm not going to cross that boundary, and then do you refer them to a therapist, or do you tell them, you know, I think that this or this other, you know, specialist can help you with this particular issue whilst we are still continuing with the coaching sessions?
Yeah, that's another good question. I wouldn't refer anyone to anyone. I would offer the suggestion. And
yeah, okay.
With the permission of the client, I would say, I can give you a couple of names of people that I recommend may be able to help you in this situation. If it's a topic where the person needs some strong counselling support, in terms of it might be a clinical issue, then I would say, ask your counsellor, if you when you meet up with them, if you can do the coaching at the same time. What sometimes happens is that it's better to deal with the counselling side first, because coaching is about working with well people. And I put well in quotes because it's difficult to define what is well mental health, but coaching is usually in that domain.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, you're asking some super questions, Eugen. Thank you.
Yay! Thank you.
And, lastly on this slide, introducing and explores the wider context. What we sometimes think about is, I'm here with you in this conversation, and there's lots of other people out there. We can't see them, but lots of other people listening to this. So we need to be conscious of them. And I can hear you are, because you're asking these questions. And I certainly am, because I'm expanding on what I'm saying. But there's that wider system, wider context that we need to be conscious of all the time. And that the same happens in a coaching conversation or a mentoring conversation or a supervision conversation. We're talking about it, especially in supervision. Who else is affected by what we're talking about today? What might, say we're talking about a team issue, what might another team member say about what we're talking about today? What might the team leader say about what we're talking about today? What might your family think about what we're talking about today? See, we can go everywhere in the wider context. How might this affect the environment? And on. So that's where the wider context is coming in there. Okay. So moving on, how supervision contributes to continuing professional development. So this is about helping us to be aware that our learning doesn't stop here. And in fairness, I've not met a coach or a mentor or a supervisor yet who doesn't love learning. So it's about,
and hopefully you never will.
Exactly. There's so much to learn out there in the world. So, this is about acknowledging that. I don't think anyone needs persuading. Sometimes we need persuading about finding time for that, because sometimes we leave ourselves to last. It's not, we're looking after, supporting other people, not looking after, we're supporting other people. And sometimes we think about our own professional development, which also not only helps us, but it also helps others in the work that we do. So here I'm saying, well, this is where the key benefits of supervision are. We're protecting that investment in ourselves. We hopefully will have trained. That's an investment in ourselves. If we're an internal coach, our organisation will have supported us. And when I say coach, I'm encapsulating mentors and supervisors and managers and leaders here. Okay, so let's encapsulate them all. It also raises our self-awareness. It helps us to understand who we are, how we might impact on other people, what sort of practice we have, what sort of style we have, where we're coming from, our philosophy, etc. And it validates and develops the role that we have. We can say, what am I doing in my practice? A supervisor will question you about how, will ask questions about how you're working with your clients, and say, well, what approach did you take with that client? So, you can have that kind of conversation. Group supervision is becoming very popular, and it is what it says there about coming together as a group, learning from each other. You can get different styles in there, different disciplines, different knowledge, different levels of experience. There's quite a dynamic that goes on between new practitioners and practitioners who've been around for a longer time. Someone comes with fresh eyes, someone comes with really good experience, and that's a beautiful mix to put all that together. It's a very creative environment. And supervision also helps us to process our experiences. We could come out of a conversation with somebody and think, when things go round and round in your head and you think, I can't find a way out of this circle.
Yes.
It's not necessary to do, it could be to do with anything. And you think, I just need someone to talk to about this. That's where supervision is great. It helps us to process that and find out what's really going on there. We're also taking responsibility, to ourselves and our stakeholders, those people that we work with, and that, the wider system that I just mentioned, for being ethical and professional. And I love that last piece there about helping us as we help others. We do our best to support others, and this supports us as practitioners. Yeah? So I thought you might like to hear, or everyone might like to hear from Tracy. Okay, Tracy is based in France, although I think she's visiting Italy at the moment, and she's an executive coach. Okay, and I asked her to say what was important for her about supervision.
Awesome.
So hi Tracy, and thanks for appearing on this small clip. And I just wondered if you'd like to say why supervision is important to you.
Yeah, hi Lise, I'm happy to. Supervision is important to me because it provides me a safe environment where I can explore all aspects of my work with clients. I can bring elements that I'm thinking about my own development as a coach and a supervisor. I can bring questions I have about working with clients, and it's really the only space that I have to do that in a safe and a confidential way. And it's been a really valuable pillar of my practice since I began as a coach.
Thank you, Tracy. That's so helpful because others will learn from you why you think it's important. Really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. See you again.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Thanks, Lise. Bye.
So that's Tracy telling us a bit more about supervision. I thought listeners might like to hear what somebody feels about the actual experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going on to how do I gain the most from supervision? So it's all very well thinking, yeah, I want to follow my professional code of ethics and I want to make sure that I do have someone to talk to about my practice and you know, what's happening in it. But what's my responsibility? So, do I just turn up and go, okay, I'm here, over to you, or do I think about it beforehand? And here's about how I can get the most from my supervision by being engaged in the process. So first of all, I have to believe in the credibility of the supervisor. I have to think they're able, that they're going to, follow professional practice, and we're going to have the type of conversation which is going to be generative. I like to reflect before a session when I have supervision. I like to think about what's going on for me, what's going to be most benefit for me and my clients by coming here today. And I mentioned before, I'm no different to anybody else in this discipline. We all want to have personal growth. And we might have professional goals. You mentioned right at the beginning, Eugen, about how do people move on from being a coach? They might come in, go through their and become a supervisor. That may be a professional goal for a practitioner. They might want to talk about what's the route that I can go along, and you can talk with that. You can talk about that with a supervisor. You might also want to get accredited, so to have your personal practice accredited and recognized, so that when you promote your services or you're asked by a sponsor, so where were you trained, and what's your credentials, so to speak, you can say, actually, I am accredited by whichever professional body or credentialed. That's about the professional goals. It's able to objectively reflect. So there is something about us thinking, how can I stand back from myself sometimes and get over myself and be objective about what I'm hearing? If someone's being honest with me about what they're seeing, do I kind of get in there and defend myself, or can I sit back and think, well, I don't have to agree with it. I'm not saying we have to agree with feedback. I'm just saying this is about being objective and reflecting on that. And really accepting that the person that I'm with, because I've chosen to work with them as my supervisor, I can accept that constructive and honest feedback from them. I trust that they will be that with me. They're not going to judge me. Coaches don't judge, do we? And supervisors won't judge and make assumptions about me. So I can feel relaxed in that what I'm hearing has some credibility there. Even if it's their reality, it could be others' reality. It may not be my reality, but it might be a reality I need to listen to. Yeah. and listen to those different perspectives. You know, we have different realities, and self-evaluate realistically about myself.
Yeah.
Am I really kind of as unconfident about a particular situation as I'm saying? You know, where's my proof for that? That's a wonderful topic. Imposter syndrome's everywhere in everyone.
Yeah.
At some time or another. So that's a great topic. And then taking responsibility for my own learning and also to give and receive feedback to facilitate that learning. And that last one there, being emotionally intelligent, is super important in a practitioner. So that's what I can gain if I come into supervision with that mindset, that growth mindset.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, does it work?
Yeah.
What I'm going to do now is go into one particular model of supervision and kind of work through that to show how it works. Okay.
Yes.
So this model by Hawkins and Smith, very well known in the supervision world, and it covers 3 areas. We call it sometimes the 3-legged stool or 3-cornered triangle or whatever. But one part of supervision is about development. We've talked about that a little bit already, and it's about that raising self-awareness and facilitating practice growth. Another part of supervision is qualitative. You know, I've talked about working ethically, talked about professional code of ethics, the global code of ethics. So it's encouraging that professional practice, quality standards, ethics, and then resourcing. This is also a really important part of a supervisor's practice, that they support the supervisee. Let's call the supervisee as a collective word.
Yeah.
Looking after themselves. Well-being is a very important part of supervision. What am I noticing in my supervisee that makes me aware that maybe they're running a bit on empty? If you think about what coaches listen to and work with, especially internal coaches, they're holding a lot of information, and it can drain us. It can drain us. So it's about being a listening ear and caring and nourishing that person, or encouraging them to look after themselves. And I'm going to run through each of these very quickly to show how we can raise that self-awareness and facilitate growth through being developmental. So what supervision does is it reveals what impact we have on others. We're not always conscious of it, are we?
Yes.
You know, we think, oh, this is how I might be coming across. And then you're brave enough to ask somebody for feedback, which we don't always relish, but some of us love it. So we might be somewhere on that continuum. It's good to know, how do I impact on others? You know, what are my irritating phrases that I use at times, or assumptions that I might make, or biases that I have that I'm not aware of? That's those blind spots. What don't I see? What level of emotional intelligence do we really have, and social intelligence? How do we relate to others to make it we Q? We are here together in a relationship. Yeah. So it's revealing that. Explores our ways of working in development, reflection on our performance. We might be asked about our practice, how we worked with this particular client, what's the relationship like between the two of us, and what approaches and personal style do we use. And it's also that personal style piece is about how we work in a different way with different people.
Yeah.
One size fit all? I don't think so. And sometimes it's really helpful to ask the client, how would you like me to be with us in this conversation? And then a supervisor will help us to introduce new ways of working. They'll introduce us to, that sounds great what you've done there, but I wonder if you use this and explain what this is, how that may have worked in this situation. Yeah, so it's working together collaboratively and being and that reflective. Let's take a look at this and think, what's really going on here? And then ideas for CPD, continuing professional development. So that's the developmental part. Now the self-reflection, for everyone to think about, how might supervision support your development? So if you're already in supervision, I guess you're answering this question, but there might be extras that you can think about to listen to the conversation we're having. If you're not working with a supervisor or working with another coach in peer supervision, start to ask yourself, what am I missing out on? That's the title of this presentation. What am I missing out on? What are those things that I'm not aware of that will help me in my practice? So here's an executive case study to give everyone an idea of what topics might come to supervision. And here we have a leader in an organization. And this leader got issues with speedy delivery, engagement and communication with their global team of teams. A global team of teams, so there's a lot of people involved. The perception of the executive who's come to supervision was that cultural differences were causing unhelpful behaviours from people working on 3 continents. So this is not an easy coverage that this executive has in their role. So exploring this with this person shows us that one team had demonstrated one team's perceptions. One team demonstrated arose. I've missed a word out there somewhere, haven't I? Inspiration with one team demonstrated that perceptions, that expertise was not recognised. So they didn't think that this executive could see how good they were basically at their job. Another team was working independently, intentionally. They were geographically miles away, so they were just doing their own thing. And then the home team praised the leadership of the executive because there was that closeness. There was that, profile, you know, the team could see the leader. So this is what the supervision revealed, that this is what was actually happening. It wasn't the perception of the executive thinking that the cultural differences was an issue. Nobody actually mentioned culture in terms of the exploration. It was all about engagement and having the emotional intelligence to understand that, you know what, people needed more communication. They didn't feel listened to. They didn't see enough of the executive. We know these things aren't always easy to accomplish because everyone's busy. But, you know, through the exploration with a supervision conversation, the executive was able to see that the reality that they were working with wasn't the reality of others. And we could move on to find out what would help them. So that's giving everyone an example of how supervision works. And here we have another clip from Fabio and Marco, and they're giving some insights from being a supervisor.
Okay.
So hi, Marco, and hi, Fabio, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this short clip. And it's just one short question. So tell me, why do you think supervision is useful for both managers and leaders?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question. We see that the managers and also the leader need to reflect about the practice, about the problems, about the environment mindset of they want to decide the choice and the problems, and they have to reflect with other people in the same room, and to understand different point of view, and to share experience for accelerate the learning of by experience, and to reflect about the most important things to remember in reflecting about the situation, to take a point, to if in another moment I see this pattern, I recognize, and I decide to manage a different reaction, and to choose to approach probably the solution that finds in sharing moments with other manager and leader involved in the process.
Thank you, Fabio.
Yeah, from my perspective, in order to add something more, what Fabio said, it's also about something about the loneliness. Manager and leader are alone to choose this decision and to find solution. And what supervision is a real and safe space where I don't need to find solution. I don't need to find a decision. I can just stay with everything in my mind, talking with someone that is completely out from my space, completely out from my dynamics, because I'm inside the dynamics and I'm free to talk with him about something that I couldn't talk in my company because maybe can create different narrative. And so in this sharing discussion, we analyze the narrative in different perspective, and this not analyzing, this feeling again. What is different narrative can move to me. Don't give me a solution, don't give me a direction, but offer me to see, other point. Maybe I need to reflect more by myself, but I'm a manager, I can do that. And I can feel that I'm not so alone because I can talk with someone. So this free space is for me what supervision is. Of course, what they need, what a supervisor in this case need to work deeply inside, because the pressure from a manager is too big. And a supervisor in this case need to stay 2 steps behind, just in order to offer point of view, but not to finish to find a solution, not to finish to suggest a solution, just to open, maybe also to create some doubts.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you both very much. It was great, and I'm sure others will appreciate your experience and your knowledge. Thank you very much. Bye for now. Ciao.
Bye.
Unconscious bias.
Yes.
In a bit more detail, yeah. So that was Marco and Fabio. They're both based in Italy. So here we've got a diagram that's showing how bias affects our actions. So conscious bias is how we see people and perceive reality. So our worldview, which it comes from our socialization, our education, our culture, our values, our norms, and we could go out, everything that affects us in our experience. This is how we see people and we perceive reality. And how we react towards people we see as different. You know, this goes back, way back.
Yeah.
In history. We perceive each other and we see difference as sometimes a threat. So it's about opening our minds to think, really? Do I really think that's a threat? I've got nothing to base that on, but we listen to it. This is our unconscious bias that we may not be aware of. And how receptive and friendly are we towards others? Do we, just ignore? When actually it would be a really good idea to engage? And how do we react to each other in relationship in the workspace and in our work? What aspects of a person we pay most attention to? So do we look for faults? And we don't realize that we are? Are we hypercritical, thinking we're being helpful, and we don't realize that actually we're being, in the eyes of the other person, critical? Going to supervision, we can start to see these things. How much do we actively listen to what others say? Not everyone, but some people, we might just completely talk over them. How often has that happened to us all in meetings or in a conversation where we just don't get to the end of what we're saying because somebody's got an idea? They may just be doing it out of excitement, but it's no conscious bias that they have, that this is a habit that they have. So how we overcome these, and this is where we get our help by having supervision conversations, is the obvious. We first recognize them, and having a conversation with a supervisor, this is how we can recognize those. And then we can start to think about going a bit deeper. How did they emerge? How did that all happen? That also helps us to look at things in an alternative way. And then we can, I just said then, we could see people, different people that we perceive are different as a threat. Well, what evidence is there to support that actual person is a threat to us? Sometimes they may be. So we're not saying don't react to, an intuition of caution. We're not saying that. We're just saying don't jump to conclusions. around, this person may be a threat. And how aware are we of our personal stereotypes? How often do we put people into brackets? We all do it, don't we? We meet people on occasion and we go, yeah, you can probably tell where you work, probably tell where you should. I know what food you like, or where you go on holiday. We can make up a whole story about someone just by looking at them. And it's about staying focused. It's about being mindful that, we do make mistakes, all of us. We're human beings, for goodness sake, it's going to happen. And it's about regulating our behavior. And we can actually retrain our brain. We know this now from neuroscience. We can those neural pathways. We've got the neuroplasticity, to say that word, and we can change those assumptions that we thought we had. So another part there of this model that I was showing you about the qualitative side is, let's follow a code of ethics and code of practice. We are unregulated in our industry, so we need a working guide and we need some standards. It supports us. It helps us to understand what good work looks like. And what's the equality? I've mentioned accreditation before. It does recognise our experience and our professional practice, validates all that knowledge and skills and behaviours that we've worked so hard to accumulate into making us the package that we are. We can get recognition for that. And we've talked about those boundaries of expertise. Now, the self-reflection point, what professional code supports your work? So for those of you that are practitioners viewing in here today, which code helps you? What supports you? And all professional.
And actually, this is a good question for everyone who's watching this, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it as a recording. Let us know in the comment. In the comment section below this video, there is a section you can comment. So let us know there what is your answer to that question. That'll be fantastic. Yeah.
Let's see how many codes we can come up with. That would be brilliant. Or not,
yes.
We're trying to get them together actually in the coaching, mentoring and supervision industry, in terms of the global code of ethics is now signed up to by about 10 or 11 professional bodies. So that's great that we're coming together as an industry. But yeah, it'd be really interesting, because I guess we'll have different disciplines online as well. People coming from different backgrounds that will follow a different professional code. So I thought we might share a case study which helps us think about what's that qualitative side of our practice. And internal coaches have a really tough time in terms of being able to keep that boundary management in line. There were, coaches work in the same system. It's easy to collude because they understand what it's like to have the tensions. So there's an extra layer for internal coaches, which supervision supports. So we've got here a manager who fully supported and funded the coach training of one of their team members, and seeing the opportunities for helping the development of colleagues and others in the organisation. So all done with good intentions, supported, let's do it. So this coach is then working with 3 coachees in the organisation and is loving this addition to their everyday role at work. And then an occasion arises where the coach's line manager, who has sponsored this training, inquired about a particular team member, how they were responding to the coaching. So they said, oh, JJ down there in the corridor, I hear they're coaching with you. How are they doing? And the coach is thinking, whoa, I wasn't expecting this. I now feel compromised because I adhere to a code of ethics, which is totally explicit about confidentiality between coach and coachees. And this request is from their line manager. Talk about being caught in, the sandwich in the middle.
Yeah.
And this is very common. It could be.
That's why I paid you to coach these guys and let me know how they do it, right? How are they doing? I paid you to do that. And what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see it running out, can't you? And so this particular coach came to supervision, and this coach was fortunate in terms of their line manager was understanding about confidentiality, but still wasn't too happy about it. because they wanted to know, you know, what was the value, the added value of paying for this person to be a coach? What was happening to JJ down the corridor from the coaching? You know, it was a genuine question. It wasn't just curiosity. And so we had that discussion about, you know, making sure, again, in the contracting, not only with your clients, but with a sponsor that paid for your training, you know, in the first place. And then these things don't happen. There's also a way we can recontract, which is what this coach actually did. They recontracted and said, you know, I know, I feel really bad about this, that you did pay for the coaching. This was what they told me, they said. And now I can understand what you want. Please understand, it goes against professional practice. And the line manager understood. So that's another one. So I've just explained what did they do and what did supervision reveal.
Mm-hmm.
So just to finish off on that one, so that people can really review and think, well, what are those ethical issues that come up in our practice? Well, we just talked about confidentiality. There's something about personal power. I did speak at the beginning of our session around encouraging that learning partnership. So there's something about us as supervisors really reflecting on making sure we don't get into that power position. And it may not necessarily be us. It might be power transferred onto us by others. They might think, oh, you're a supervisor, so you're the expert, you know everything, you'll be able to give me the answers. You can see, you can hear the script. And this is about us not encouraging that. This is, you know, as equal as we can get it. And I know some people will say, yeah, that's all very well, Lise, but, you know, the fact is that that's the reality. So you've got to work with it. All I'm saying is let's encourage not going down that route if we possibly can. We talked about earlier about doing no harm. That was that boundary management that you asked those lovely questions about, Eugen. And there's also something about our competence. Let's play above our weight, so to speak, in terms of what we're capable of. And let's make sure that we are competent to practice what we're doing. We talked about unconscious bias, so we're familiar with that one. And let's think about our own well-being. Part of supervision, as I said earlier, is about ensuring that our clients, whoever they are, all the people that we mentioned coming into supervision, look after their well-being and be a role model. I take the responsibility of being a role model. I don't always get it right, again, because we're not perfect, any of us, but it's about doing our best to be a role model of well-being. And is it fair, you know, as a supervisor, would I work with a client when I don't feel well? No, because that's not fair. I'm not at my peak performance coming into practice, so no, it's unethical.
And I think here, if I might add, it might be like, you know, I'm not working with a client if I don't feel well, or I'm not working with a client if I feel there is any sort of, I don't know, animosity or disjunction or some sort of I just plainly dislike this client, you know, and then I won't go into working with this client. Again, you know, being ethical towards them, but also being ethical and ecological with my own self.
Yeah, absolutely, Eugen. And that's a great scenario to share with us, because that can happen in organizations where coaches are allocated to clients.
Yes.
Yeah. Whereas more in independent practice, where people are practitioners are acting professionally, you will have what we call a chemistry meeting. You'll have let's see how we get on together to see, and it works both ways for the practitioner and the client, to let's see how we gel. Is it going to work? Because we can talk about some pretty deep topics in coaching and mentoring and supervision, can't we? So do I really,
of course,
am I really prepared to disclose to this person? Am I going to get the best out of it if I feel, oh no, I've got to stop there? And that again, it is a big issue for internal practitioners around that area. So you're absolutely right. Assumptions about differences, we talked about that earlier. you know, I'm going to make up a whole story about you, and I don't even know you. So we've talked about that a bit. That's unethical. Let's not make any judgment about anyone or assume anything. And that last one there is about, we're talking more now about responsibility for the environment. We know we've got big problems. We have to look after the climate, otherwise we won't have any life on Earth. And a question is, what role is there in what we do in raising this topic?
Mm-hmm.
Many people will say it's all about the client's agenda. Well, the client's agenda does include the environment. You know, if you look towards the bigger system that we talked about earlier, that's there.
Yeah.
It can be quite a contentious point. I'm just putting it out there for people to consider. I'm not saying there's no shoulds here.
Yeah.
Don't use shoulds in our conversations. This is about just putting it out there for us to reflect on. So that's the qualitative side of our practice. That last one here, I'll bring up well-being here, that resourcing. It's a supervisor's role to listen, care and nourish. You know, if we've got somebody there that just wants to actually spend the whole session just offloading, do you know what? I've had really so many difficult client conversations this week. I just want to download.
And how would this be different from a normal, let's say, coaching session with someone, with a coach? Like, so, you know, what is the difference between unloading with a coach versus unloading with a mentor or with a supervisor?
Yeah, well, there probably isn't any difference, actually,
Okay.
in terms of the listening and caring and nourishing, but it's not necessarily a role of a coach to, you know, to raise it. Whereas in supervision, a supervisor is likely to raise it, certainly if they're noticing it. So it could happen in a coaching conversation, and why wouldn't you as a coach listen and care and nourish?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Of course you would, but it's actually part of the supervision role to go there.
Yeah.
So, you know, we do the exploration. Let's see what's going on here in your work, and what's depleting your energy in it. Again, that learning partner comes up. We demonstrate empathy. You would expect this, wouldn't you? These are all things that you would expect to happen.
Yeah.
Talking about well-being. How do you look after your physical health? Well, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got to go to the gym every day, but there is something about how do you look after your body? Yeah, how fit are you? Is there some time in you make space for yourself in your life around looking after your own well-being? Yeah, and that mental health. So that's the part of the resourcing. And again, self-reflection, who cares for your well-being? So, you know, are you anticipating that someone's going to, out there, automatically nourish you? Well, we can't rely on that, can we? That may happen for us, and that's wonderful. But there is something about, especially as in our work, that we need to be having some self-care. And we've heard the phrase, you know, the airline one, look after you, get the, you know, the oxygen mask, look after yourself first, and then you can look after others. This is very true in what we do in this work as well. Okay, and I just wanted to just give you a few kind of thoughts about what's happening in organisations with mental health. And employers are becoming more aware of their responsibility, and there is a business case for it. Why wouldn't you want to look after your employees?
Yeah.
But how many organisations promote long working days? I mean, I'm glad to see that Gen Z and millennials are no longer putting up, well, millennials probably still are caught up in the let's get a takeaway and carry on into the evening and finish this project. I'm generalising, of course.
Yeah.
But Gen Z, they're certainly not going there. They started work in COVID. They get their job done. That's it. And that's, you know, if you look at it from the point of view of self-care, that's working, and it's keeping people healthy in the business, physically, mentally, and their social well-being. You know, we want people to feel good about coming to work, don't we? And we want to feel happy. Happiness equals well-being. So there's a few.
And then equals productivity and so many other things, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all obvious, but when you're in that system of, no, we work late, your line manager's working late, and we've got to get this finished. Do you say, no, I'm not staying late? Gen Z will, but a lot of the workforce say, no, I'm not staying. Yeah. Gen Z will do upward delegation. They'll say, well, if you want to get it done, then you go it, because they've got a big voice in the employment market right now. 16% more productive if satisfied with working environment. This is some Harvard Business Review survey. 18% more likely to stay. The cost of replacing people in organizations is huge. Anyone who's listening here in HR will know the cost of replacing employees and reinitiating them, reselecting, etc.
Yeah. I
thought this was an interesting one. 30% of people are more attractive to their company over competitors. 30%,
say that again?
30% of people are more attracted to staying in their company over going to a competitor.
In what? Because
if they're looked after.
Oh, if they're taken care of, looked after. Okay.
Yeah.
Pampered.
Well, I didn't go that far, but maybe that's,
Yeah. I read a while back, I read that actually the overall atmosphere at work is a much bigger incentive for someone to stay at a job than the salary. So let's say this person works at this company, and then they are offered a better salary at this company. But if the atmosphere is here, if the interaction with the co-workers is great, then even if they would get paid more, chances are they will stay here because of the camaraderie and because of the friendships that they have at work.
That's absolutely right, Eugen. That's what this one is talking. This particular bullet point is about. It's about that. Younger people now are expecting green workspace. The kind of the room that you can go into and bash the wall and get rid of your frustration. That's no longer enough. People care about the environment. They care about their health. The younger generations coming in, they expect that. It's not a nice to have anymore. It's something that they want.
It's a must. Yeah.
And then 66% were more likely to accept a new job or keep the one they have in a workplace focused on their health and well-being. So that's just reinforcing exactly what you've just said. People will stay where they are, or they'll go somewhere where they feel cared for. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this last piece here about supervision as an agent of change and encouraging well-being conversations to be accepted as the norm, because it's all very well saying that, just pull that back a bit. It's all very well saying that we care about our people. How often do you hear that strapline? We care about people. People are the most important part of our organization. And then you look around and you can see people absolutely drained out and overloaded with work. So then there can sometimes be, I better not say that I'm feeling absolutely not able to do this work. I'm not going to say that it's too much for me, because it has to be frowned upon in my organization. So what needs to happen, and I think it is moving in that direction more from what I can see in organizations that I work in, and also some of the reports that are coming out, that people are starting to recognize that it's okay to talk about well-being. Let's not be inhibited about it. There's no shame in feeling depressed or have anxiety if you've got mental health issues due to work, or maybe something else come to that. This is about really caring, really genuinely caring about people. Yeah. And hybrid working has been a great bonus for some people. They've loved it. I can come into the office, feel like it. I don't have to come into the office at all. I can work from home all of the time. But sometimes that can be socially isolating, and people are starting to suffer from loneliness, in quotes. They may live alone and being on a laptop all day might be productive, but it's not helping their well-being in terms of sociability. and talking about how I really feel. How many times when you greet someone, you say, "How are you?" and they go, "Fine."
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So how many times do we then go, "Okay, then let's have a look at fine. What does fine actually mean?" And there's no shame in being overwhelmed. I can't cope. I have this a lot in my practice, where people come and they say, "Oh, I just can't cope with it." Well, I'm just expected. We've got less people because resources are tight now. The workplace of today, we all know about inflation. We've got global recession. It's not just in isolated spots. It's a global recession. There's slow or no growth. So it's more expected with less resources, and people are getting overwhelmed. And why not say I can't cope? And then they've got that lack of physical, mental, emotional energy. It just gets too overwhelmed, doesn't it? And you just, in fact, the brain keeps going longer than the body. The brain will go, "Got to get this done. This is something I've got to," and the body saying, "I don't think so. You've pushed far enough. I'm gonna get a cold, or I'm just gonna be exhausted and not be able to get up. And I want to stay in bed all day and have a duvet day." So
duvet day, I like that one.
duvet day, that's where I'm staying. I'm going to be a dormouse and hibernate for a couple of days. Willingness to show vulnerability. Let's just say I'm just not up to what this is happening here. I just can't manage with it. And it may be okay to ask for help, although people may feel they can't ask. So there is something about the individual's inhibitions as well. We're not talking here about necessarily the leadership in organizations or the culture of organization. That's part of it. But there's also a part in us. We may have a very caring organization that looks after their employees really well and knows all the business case for doing this. But people may still feel in themselves some inhibitions about showing their vulnerability and have those feelings of shame. So again, supervision can help with drawing this out. Yeah.
Love it.
What are your thoughts about this? I'm asking everyone that's watching it. Where do you come in this equation? Do you speak up and say enough is enough? I'm not doing anymore. I need a break. Or do you think I'll work longer hours? I'll work.
Or do you feel like it's enough, but you're not saying anything about it, and then you work longer hours? Like you suck it up, as they say, right? You just put your head down, dig in your heels and do more work.
Yeah, just suck it up. Okay, so we've come to an end now, Eugen.
It's such an amazing presentation, so much value and so much information, and thank you so much for such a beautiful and in-depth presentation on the value of supervision, which is so very important. Now, I know you've been, you specialized and you've been working with so many organizations and even, doing sessions with coaches. So my question here, of course, would be, how can people get in touch with you? How can they reach out to you beyond the email address that are right now on the screen? So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Eugen. Well, I mean, please link in on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn quite a lot, and we'll continue doing that. I'm very happy to receive emails on either of those two email addresses.
So for everyone who's watching right now, you have the email for Lise right there on screen, lise.lewis@blueskyinternational.com or lise@liselewis.com. That's where you can get in touch with Lise. Now, do you have any programs yourself that you are working on, that you are promoting, that you could offer participants, or they can jump on, or what's going on there?
Absolutely. Well, as we've been talking about supervision today, Eugen, I am a supervisor, so I'm always willing to work with people on their practice, and that's in organizations or independents. I'm also an executive coach, so I can offer coaching and mentoring.
Awesome, yeah.
And my specialisms really are in relational leadership. So I work a lot in organizations with people who want to improve relationships within their teams or generally across the board. So that's kind of a main focus of mine. That's the liselewis.com website. People want to go on that one. And then the Lise Lewis at Blue Sky International. I founded Blue Sky in 2020 when I decided I wanted to kind of work for myself, and then I rebranded around 2009 into Blue Sky International because I was working internationally, and we've blossomed, I'm glad to say, and now offer training in to be a coach, to be a mentor, and to be a coach supervisor. So all our programs are accredited by EMCC, so we hold this quality standard, and we've integrated into that the opportunity to get your own personal accreditation. So all of these areas, and I'm very excited to say this is a new venture, and I haven't even got any details about it, but in 2023, I'm going to start a podcast with a colleague, and we're going to start talking about some of those issues that people have in their working life and in organizations that, if only we could overcome these situations. And we're going to talk about how coaching and mentoring and supervision serves those. And so we're looking forward to having some interesting conversations starting in 2023. So if anybody wants to volunteer to come onto those, to give some business perspective, or even to come on and talk about a particular topic, do let me know about that as well. I'd love to hear from you. And we're also involved with team coach supervision. So let's put that out there as well. It's not just one-to-one supervision, it's team coach supervision. And I'm working in partnership with others to offer training in team coach supervision next year. So we've got a new program starting in May. So all of those things, anything coaching, mentoring, supervision, I think I can either give you some advice on, help you with, or refer you to one that can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lise, for this amazing presentation. Everyone, you know how to get in touch with Lise. Go ahead and reach out to her. There will be also some links on the presentation page as well for you to be able to connect with Lise. Also, reach out on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, then I advise you go on LinkedIn as well. And we'll take now a quick break. Lise, thank you so much for your amazing presentation, and I'm looking forward to working together with you again in the future for our programs and events that we are working on. Thank you so much.
Me too. It's been an absolute pleasure, Eugene. Thanks for inviting me in. It was lovely to share with you all today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So everyone, we'll take a quick break. We'll see you after the break for the next presentation, or we'll see you tomorrow. Depends which comes first. Go ahead, stretch, hydrate, do whatever you need to do, and then we'll see you soon. Stay tuned.